want to welcome all of you today. I'm very excited about our episode as we have today our guest. Her name is Kathy Bishop from Lodi, Wisconsin. And so, Kathy, good to have you with us today,
yes,
that you made the trip
you.
over here. Yeah. And I'll tell you, as I've been learning a little bit about your background, I've been very impressed with all of your experiences. But the emphasis that you certainly have is that of friendship. And so as we get started today, I want to read a Bible passage from John chapter 15, beginning with the 13th verse. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know what his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I've learned from my Father, I've made known to you. And so, Kathy, as I think about a friend, that's the Bible passage that came to mind. I think about Jesus as being our friend. And of course, there's that popular hymn, What a Friend That We Have in Jesus. But really showing that would be the ultimate gift of friendship, is to lay down your life for your friends, and that is something for which Jesus has done. So as we think about friends, or being a friend of Jesus, that Jesus is all of our friend. I mean, we'd say that Jesus would be the friend to all 7 billion plus people in this world this day. And so we're going to talk about friendship today, but one of the things that we should do is just kind of learn a little bit about your background. And as I learn about your background, Kathy, I'm rather impressed by it. You know, many of your experiences and your background. And so she just mentioned, you are from Lodi, Wisconsin, and maybe you can just share with people, where exactly is Lodi?
Well, Lodi, Wisconsin is approximately an hour and 15 minutes from here. Go toward Madison, Wisconsin, and then cut over toward the northwest off of Highway 12. And take Highway P, and you come to a little town, and you come in and it says, Lodi, home of Susie the Duck.
Okay.
And we claim Susie as our mascot in Lodi because we have a spring-fed creek that runs along the main street and actually underneath the main street. So you don't know you're driving over a creek when you come in. And the mallard ducks live there year-round, and one thing led to another. And years ago, she got named Susie, and it's kind of our claim to fame.
Susie the Duck. So you got to go to Lodi to see Susie.
Oh, it's a beautiful community, and it's set in a valley, and Lake Wisconsin is near. So we have a lot of hills, and sort of like the drive down here around Dubuque. It's hilly, not quite as hilly. And then we have the Lake Wisconsin and the river. So it's a beautiful area.
That's what I've always heard, that Lodi is a beautiful community. And so here again, if you get the chance to go to Lodi, I think it would be worth the drive and to go there. And so have you lived in Lodi all of your life, or where did you originate?
I originally grew up in a lovely small community in Michigan, northern Michigan.
Like northern Michigan, or as like the UP?
And the Upper Peninsula.
Okay.
Yes. And
all the Finlanders, right?
Yes, I'm 50% Finlander.
Okay, I kind of wondered.
And 50% Italian.
Okay.
And my dear grandparents came over from Vicenza area near Venice, Italy.
Okay.
To live there. The other ones came from Finland. But they settled there with the intention on going back to Italy to buy a farm, but they never did get back. So I grew up there in a small town, and feel fortunate when I think back. At high school I was happy to leave, but when you grow up, you think, very fortunate to be brought up in a wonderful little community that I was brought up in.
And I see that you have had some experience of being a flight attendant. What airline did you work for?
Well, I left high school and wanted to go to the big city, so I applied and was accepted at Michael Reese Hospital for my professional training, which eventually I became a radiation therapist. And I worked in that a couple after I completed school in Chicago. I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, because I knew people there, and began my first work with cancer patients and loved it. Felt called to work with cancer patients. I knew that the Lord was calling me to do that. But after a couple years, I saw an ad in a magazine that American Airlines were looking for flight attendants, and so I got in my best dress and I drove to Milwaukee to the interview, and they hired me on the spot. And before I knew it, I was down at Dallas-Fort Worth to train, and that was a real exciting, fun experience. I think I grew and learned a lot, and in so many areas, you know, and professionalism and dress and manners, and you know, they just teach you so much, emergency. And after that, I went to Chicago and flew for a short period of time. So the airlines was fun. When I retired from the airlines, I joined a group and belonged to that group for a long time. We were called the Kiwis.
The Kiwis?
That's American Airlines ex or retired
okay.
flight attendants. They're called Kiwis after the New Zealand kiwi bird that has wings but doesn't fly.
Oh, okay. That's wing. Okay, I get it.
So
well, I imagine you saw a lot of places too as you were a flight attendant.
Well, I flew mostly out east, and in the New York and Washington D.C. and that area. Excuse me.
Yeah. So having experience as a health professional and a flight attendant, and so in both cases, when you think about it, both are, you know, a lot of servant work there.
Right. I always enjoyed being around people and friendships, and I'm a kind of outgoing person, but I always had a heart for the patients and the sick people. I was kind of, you know, back and forth between the two worlds, so to speak. But my heart was really with my profession in radiation therapy.
Yeah. Okay, so now you've also had experience now. What do I understand that you were part of the Mrs. Wisconsin and the Universe pageant? Explain that.
Well, after the airlines, I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I wasn't ready to go back into my profession, so I immediately enrolled in a modeling agency and trained to be a professional model. So I modeled for a while in Milwaukee and then also worked at St. Mary's Hospital. But I had a couple unique opportunities at the time, and one was to enter the Miss Wisconsin Universe contest. And I was a runner-up in that. And then a few months later, I entered the Miss Milwaukee. They called it Miss Columbus. It was put on by the American Italian Federation in Milwaukee. And so I was crowned the winner of that contest and enjoyed meeting people, being social and so on. So that was interesting. But this other interest in the Mrs. Wisconsin Universe pageant came many years later.
Okay.
This was in 2000, and I just felt called by the Lord to do this, and I don't know why, but I just knew that I was supposed to be in the contest, and so I worked hard and got in shape and just knew I was going to win that contest. And that was very interesting. It was held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we got to the evening. They were going to choose and name the winner, and they named the top 10, and I wasn't in it. And I thought, you know, Lord, you wanted me to be in this. I know you did. I just knew it. And so, but I felt good, and they named the winner, and I was happy for that person. And then right at the end, they said, because it's the Mrs. Wisconsin pageant, they put an emphasis on marriage and relationships. And my husband and I at the time, probably the 10 to 15 years prior, were quite active as a couple in church, and we had couples Bible studies in our homes for years. And we had gone to marriage encounters and been helped with one of those. And so you had to write an essay when you entered the contest about your marriage. And so because that was part of the contest. And at the very end, after they announced a winner, then they said, well, we have one more award to present, and that's our special award of the person that we feel is most representative of marriage. And they announced the winner, and I was the winner of the Commitment to Marriage Award at the Mrs. Wisconsin Universe pageant.
Well, I'll tell you, that's some pretty special accomplishments that you have received in your life, and a lot of wonderful experiences. But you know, one of the things that you have come to appreciate in your life would be that of, well, friendships and things, and how God has used friendships to lead you, but also that has become now so much a point of your life and your ministry. So why don't you just share a little bit about friends and what friends have meant to you, and how God has used friends to bring you to this place where you're at today.
When I was asked to speak for Stonecroft Ministries, who I speak for mostly, I was putting my story together and just look back at my life and how I came to the place where I'm at. And I began to look at the people in my life that at some point were significant. And I have to start out with my family, and my Italian grandmother in particular, who came from Italy with 2 children, and she and my grandfather proceeded to have 6 more, so they had a total of 8. And he died at 47.
Oh, wow.
Left my grandmother, and she expressed such a faith in God that she made an impact not only on me, but I'm sure a lot of my other siblings and my cousins. And she always, I spent a lot of time with her. She always talked about God. So it kind of started with her, and then my mother, because of course my grandmother had faith, my mother had a faith, and I was always taken to Sunday school and church and so on. So I look back, and that was to me one of the key friendships, and I'm always so grateful for that I had that upbringing, something to go back to, something to remember. But as usual, you go out in your life and you kind of get in the world, and I made that decision to do that. But along the path, as I looked, friends always came into my life. I had a friend in Milwaukee, and she was a little different person and befriended me. And for the first time in a long time, she brought up God. And she talked to me about God. She asked me if I went to church. You know, just something so simple. It just made an impact on me. You know, and I look back and I know that was from God. He was speaking to me at that time. And then another person came into my life. So I went on with my life, you know, after that, moved back to Madison. I met my husband, and we got married and settled into Lodi. We lived in Eau Claire for a couple of years. But before I met my husband, I felt, you know, I'd gone to church all my life. I had, you know, Jesus was a friend of mine growing up. I'd talk to him and pray to him and had a relationship. I think I made that decision to go my own way in the world. You know, each one of us make a decision at some point in our life. Where are we going to follow God or not follow God? And I think for a lot of people it comes at an age when you're a teenager. However, it can come earlier or later in life. So I made that decision, and my life wasn't quite the same after that. So there was always this, even though I did this, I went to the airlines, I was a model, I won the beauty contests, I had a great profession. You think that would be a great thing, right?
You think that your life would be so satisfied and fulfilled.
Right.
Yeah.
But without the Lord, there's always something missing. And you feel that innately, even though everybody that does not have the Lord probably has that, and they may not think of it consciously. There's that missing. They try and fill it with other things. But I knew there was something missing in my life, and so I began to search, and I met with a pastor at a church, and we spoke, and I just expressed that there was something missing. What was it? Well, he prayed, I'm sure, and I left, but I remember that shortly after that, maybe it was months or days or weeks, that I came to a point where I knew that I had the foundation from growing up, and I knew where to go, and I knew to whom to pray. And I prayed to Jesus, and I said, please forgive me, and would you come into my life? And not knowing until much later that at that moment when I prayed, he came in. Because the Bible does say he stands at the door of your heart and knocks. And if any man hears and opens the door, he will come in and sup.
Yeah. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you're referring to right there, that he's there knocking on your door of your heart, and you said, Lord, I want you to come in at this time. And so it sounds like you had quite an influence by your friend, and then this pastor.
Right.
And then but also decisions that we make.
Right.
Really, we make them. Some decisions we make in a day, and we think, well, it's no big deal if we, choose one soft drink over another. It's probably not going to be that big of a deal. But then there's other times in our lives that, as we come to that road, or that crossroads in life, where we got to make a decision that is going to really majorly affect our whole life, either positively or adversely, one way or another. And so when you think about your decision for Jesus, it really is the biggest decision that you'll ever make.
Yes, it's the only one that counts.
The only one that counts, yeah.
And
when all is said and done, that's the only one that counts.
That's one reason that, and the Lord then continued to help me to grow. I think the Holy Spirit, once you receive the Lord, the Holy Spirit comes in, you're sealed for eternity, but you have the Holy Spirit, so then He begins to woo you to do things. And He began to woo me to go to church and to read the Bible and to think about God and to pray, and not even knowing it till later when I look back and I thought, yes, from that moment I began to change. I could identify the changes in my life. The desire to change, the desire to go to church. And that's when I met my husband and continued to grow. And moved to Lodi then, and got involved, was invited right away. I could see the Lord moving my life and my steps and guiding. So I got involved in Stonecroft and became, as soon as I walked in, and because it's an organization that no matter where you go, whether it's a Bible study or a luncheon or a prayer connection, you'll hear the gospel. You'll hear about Jesus. And I immediately, when I went to the first one, the speaker was so clear, telling about her friend Jesus and how to know him, that God called me that day, and I began to become involved. So they asked me to be chairman of the group, and I was chairman for approximately a year. And I was kidding the ladies, I was chairing the meeting, and we were having a good time. It was a really fun program that day. And I was having a real difficult time speaking. And I couldn't pronounce my words. And so I said, ladies, don't pay any attention to me. I can't pronounce my words today. And so we all laughed and we went on with the meeting. Well, afterwards, I stopped over to see my father-in-law, who happened to be at the time a family physician. And I said to him, you know, my cheek and my tongue are tingling. What do you suppose that is? And he said, well, how long have you had that? And I said, approximately a year. So he got up and went and got his medical journal and came down and opened it up to the anatomy. And I said, that's it. That's exactly where it is. So he got on the phone and he said, where do you go to the doctor? And I told him, he said, looked up. He said, well, I'd like you to see a neurologist. So he looked up and he immediately made me an appointment to see a neurologist in the next day or the day after, or shortly after. So I saw the neurologist, and he told me right that day that I had a brain tumor. And so I had been feeling the best I had felt in a long time. It never occurred to me that I would be told that I had a brain tumor. And in 2 weeks, I was scheduled for a 13-and-a-half-hour brain surgery. And when I was diagnosed, the Lord gave me such a peace. I knew that if I died on the operating table, that I would go to be immediately with Him. But the other thing about that experience was so significant was that I saw the life clearer, the meaning of life, the priority of life, the importance of God, and the assurance of knowing where you would go when you die. You know, I could have that peace because I had made that decision. But fortunately, I came out of the surgery just fine, sort of. I lost hearing in my right ear, so I'm deaf in my right ear, and I lost some facial function, eye function. But I came to a point where the seriousness of eternity and gave me a burden, like, for people to make the decision, because you just do not know what's going to happen to you the next day, the next hour, the next week. And to be prepared to where you would spend eternity. And everybody has to make that choice. And my heart goal is to try and get that message out to as many people to help them make that decision. Because each person relates differently to people, you know, and hopefully some people will relate to me and make that important decision about eternity.
Well, so as you know, you look at your life's journey and how you've done so well in so many things, but yet feeling this emptiness, but then coming to know Christ, that your life is fulfilled, made complete. And then just as you are really doing some good ministry, going out speaking, sharing your story, and all of a sudden feeling this tingle, and now having to have, well, major surgery. And this is really a major life event. And so when you think about that, I mean, it's almost like that's, in some ways you'd say, or some people would say that's a major test of your faith as you're going through a major storm, crisis in life. You know, I mean, for some people that may just crush them, saying, well, God, everything now is just going well in my life, and now what's this? But how you took it, it's more that God gave you a peace about this. If anything, it certainly gave you, you know, direction in your life as far as, you know, how to minister to people in other ways now as well. It's just amazing what, you know, your faith did for you, or has helped you get through these real critical times. You know, it's a critical time in your life, and you're doing so well today.
It was friends, a lot of friends, family and friends, and people praying, and church people that helped get me through to, I think, one of the most amazing experiences I had through the brain tumor was getting an eternal perspective of the power of prayer, because I just could know that people were praying for me and holding me up and helping me to get through this, because it wasn't easy. I changed forever, you know, being in the airlines and modeling and being a beauty queen. When you have a facial deficit and change, it's a drastic change. It takes some time to get used to that. And they helped me get through that and to move on. You know, there were some very difficult times, very difficult days and years. I experienced a little bout of depression, and they helped me get through that. And but you look back again and see the Lord's hand. You know, that this impact, people can relate, and you can relate to other people.
Yeah, so Jesus is our friend. But how, when we are connected with the church then, how we're surrounded by so many friends who show that Christ-likeness, who love us and care for us and who carry us during those times where, you know, otherwise it would be just overwhelming. It would be very, you know, hard to do that. And so friendships are so very important in life. You know, a friend is a mentor, somebody who cares about us, somebody who's there for us, not just in the good times, but also in the tough times. And so as I think about, Kathy, your ministry, are you able to go out and, or are you willing to go out and talk to church groups and different organizations? And if so, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, I always look forward to any opportunity to share the gospel and share Jesus. It can be their best friend, and he laid down his life for them. They can get a hold of me by the email that I gave you, KTV Open Door, and I'd be happy to. I'm available to travel or to go. So.
Sounds great. Well, we just want to thank you, Kathy, for being on the show today and your inspiration and for the friendship that you bring. Well, thank you for joining us this day as well.